Ambassador Min Jun Park straightened his simple gray suit as he walked through the massive corridors of Nexus Prime. The orbital station served as the heart of galactic politics, where hundreds of species came together to argue, trade, and occasionally cooperate. Today felt different, though. The air itself seemed thick with tension. The council chamber stretched out like a vast amphitheater. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the curved seating areas. The warrior-like Vorlak sat in their heavy armor, while the tall, elegant Thessians wore their flowing robes of office. Above them all, the crystal-bodied Zephyrians floated in their special atmospheric bubbles, their advanced technology allowing them to participate without breathing the same air as others. Min Jun took his place in the human section. Earth had only 12 seats in a chamber that held over 1,000. Most species barely noticed when he sat down. The humans were useful sometimes, but not really important in the grand scheme of things. At least, that was what everyone believed. Council Prime Veltar, a Zephyrian whose crystal body pulsed with soft blue light, called the session to order. His voice carried clearly through the translation systems, built into every seat. We gather today to address the growing conflict between the Vorlak Empire and the Thessian Trade Collective, Veltar announced. Both sides have filed formal complaints. Both demand action from this council. General Thrakus stood up from the Vorlak section. His massive frame dominated the speaking platform as he activated his armor's voice amplifier. The Thessians have violated our ancestral hunting grounds in the Kepler sector. They build their mining stations on worlds where our ancestors shed blood for glory. This is an insult that demands satisfaction. The general's words echoed through the chamber. Several smaller species shifted nervously in their seats. When the Vorlak talked about satisfaction, they usually meant war. Trade Minister Kex rose gracefully from the Thessian area. Her 6 arms moved in elegant patterns as she spoke, a gesture that her people used to show importance. The Vorlak claim ownership of empty space. These worlds have no permanent settlements, no active use. Our mining operations bring prosperity to the entire sector. We follow all galactic commerce laws. Back and forth they went. The Vorlak spoke of honor and tradition. The Thessians talked about economic efficiency and legal rights. Other species began choosing sides based on their own interests. The militaristic species supported the Vorlak. The trade-focused civilizations backed the Thessians. Hours passed. The arguments grew louder. Threats began replacing words. Several species walked out of the chamber rather than listen to more shouting. Council Prime Veltar's crystal body flickered with frustrated red light. This council has heard both positions. We will now consider solutions. Are there any proposals for mediation? I want her. We have Seplo. We have courts sepsided. The Centauran Republic suggested dividing the territory equally. The Vorlak rejected this immediately. The Altarian Science Collective proposed a joint research station. The Thessians said it would interfere with mining operations. Every suggestion failed. The two sides refused to compromise. Their allies supported them no matter what. The chamber, filled with angry voices and translation static. Min Jun stood up quietly. He pressed the button to request speaking time. The soft chime barely carried over the noise. The chair recognizes Ambassador Park of Earth, Veltar announced, though his tone suggested he was just going through the motions. Several Vorlak representatives turned to look at Min Jun with amusement. The Thessians whispered among themselves. Most species paid no attention at all. Humans were known for saying nice things that sounded good but solved nothing. Min Jun walked to the central platform. He did not use voice amplification. He did not make grand gestures. He simply spoke, clearly and calmly. Honored representatives, this conflict centers on more than territory. The Kepler sector worlds contain the largest freshwater reserves in this part of the galaxy. Both sides need this water, but neither side has said this openly. A few species looked up with interest. Water rights were always important, but nobody had mentioned them today. The Vorlak hunt in this sector because their home worlds are becoming too dry to support their traditional way of life. The Thessians need water for their mining operations, but they also need it for the 3 billion refugees they have accepted from the Outer Rim conflicts. General Thrakus growled softly. Trade Minister Kex's arms stopped moving. Minjun had touched on sensitive truths that both sides preferred to keep private. Earth proposes a shared guardianship of the water worlds. The Vorlak would patrol and protect the systems, maintaining their warrior traditions while serving a greater purpose. The Thessians would manage extraction and distribution, ensuring fair access for all sector inhabitants. Both sides would receive what they truly need, and their people would benefit. Minjun outlined a detailed plan. The Vorlak would get water for their homelands, plus exclusive hunting rights on certain moons. The Thessians would get mining access, plus guaranteed water supplies for their refugee populations. Smaller species in the sector would receive protection and fair trade opportunities. The proposal addressed underlying fears that nobody wanted to admit. The Vorlak feared their culture dying as their worlds dried up. The Thessians feared economic collapse under the weight of refugee care. The plan offered both sides a path to honor and prosperity. Minjun finished speaking and returned to his seat. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Several smaller species nodded thoughtfully. A few representatives began quiet discussions with their neighbors. Then General Thrakus stood up again. The human speaks of fear and need, as if the mighty Vorlak Empire suffers from weakness. We do not bargain away our ancestral rights for promises of shared water. This soft sentiment insults our warrior spirit. Trade Minister Kiex rose as well. The human proposal sounds pleasant, but it ignores economic reality. Shared guardianship means shared profits. The Thessian collective cannot subsidize Vorlak culture while supporting millions of refugees. This plan is economically naive. Other major powers joined the criticism. The Zephyrian Technology Councils called the plan primitive thinking. The Rigel Defense Alliance said it showed typical human weakness. Council Prime Veltar called for a vote. The Chamber's electronic systems tallied the responses quickly. 847 votes against the human proposal. 23 votes in favor. Most of those came from small species that rarely mattered in council decisions. The chamber erupted in renewed arguing as the Vorlak and Thessians returned to their original demands. Minjun sat quietly through the chaos. When the session finally adjourned with no resolution, he stood up slowly. He walked to the central platform one more time and requested a final statement. Earth thanks this council for considering our proposal, he said simply. We respect your decision to pursue other solutions. Humanity will be reassessing its galactic commitments in light of current circumstances. We wish all species wisdom in finding their own path forward. Most representatives were already leaving. Few noticed the careful words Minjun chose. Fewer still understood what they meant. Only Ambassador Tavara of the Vegan Collective remained in her seat, watching the human diplomat with growing concern. Her people remembered when Earth had quietly solved their water crisis 5 years ago. They remembered how humanity had asked for nothing in return. As Minjun left the chamber, Tavara wondered if the galaxy had just made a terrible mistake. 3 months after the failed council session, Dr. Sarah Chen packed the last of her research equipment into storage containers. The Altarian Science Collective's main laboratory had been her second home for 4 years. Now, she was leaving it forever. Dr. Chen, please reconsider, pleaded senior researcher Zalveth, his blue-scaled face showing genuine distress. Your work on genetic adaptation has saved thousands of our people. The new atmospheric processors you designed will help us colonize 3 more worlds. Sarah sealed the final container and entered her authorization code. The equipment would be shipped back to Earth within the week. I'm sorry, Zalveth. My contract is complete, and Earth Fleet Command has new assignments for me. It's time to go home. She did not mention the quiet message all human researchers had received. The message that simply said, "Complete current obligations and return home at your earliest convenience." No explanations. No emergency declarations. Just a gentle request that felt like an order. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out in laboratories, hospitals, and research stations. Dr. James Harrison finished his final agricultural report on the outer colony worlds and declined all renewal offers. Commander Elena Rodriguez completed her patrol tour with the Centauran Defense Fleet and received immediate orders to return to Earth. Professor Lisa Wang uploaded her last cultural exchange studies to the Galactic Archive and boarded a transport home. The pattern went unnoticed at first. Humans were always coming and going from various assignments. Their willingness to work anywhere, with any species, had made them valuable throughout known space. But they never stayed in one place very long, so their departures seemed normal. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the patrol vessel Harmony as it docked at Centauran Station Beta for the last time. Her mixed crew of humans and Centaurans had protected the trade routes in this sector for 2 years. They had stopped 17 pirate attacks and rescued hundreds of stranded travelers. "Captain, are you certain about this?" asked Commander Velnash, her Centauran second officer. "Our partnership has been most successful. Your tactical innovations have made this sector the safest in the outer regions." Elena looked out at the busy space lanes they had protected. Merchant ships moved peacefully between the stations, their crews trusting that someone watched over them. "The Harmony is being reassigned, Velnash. Earth Fleet needs her elsewhere." What Elena did not say was that Earth Fleet was quietly pulling all ships back to human space, not emergency recalls, not dramatic withdrawals, just routine reassignments that happened to bring every human vessel home. Velnash studied the duty rosters his aide had prepared. The replacement patrol schedule shows significant gaps. Without the Harmony's coverage, we will struggle to maintain full protection. "I'm sure you'll adapt," Elena said, though she felt troubled by the words. The Centaurans were good people. Their partnership had been built on mutual respect and shared goals. Leaving them felt like abandoning friends. 2 weeks later, piracy in the sector increased by 23%. On the diplomatic front, changes came more slowly but just as surely. Ambassador Min Jun Park submitted his resignation and returned to Earth to teach at the University of Seoul. His replacement, Attaché Johnson, had strict instructions to observe and report, but not to participate actively in council debates. Earth's embassy offices across the galaxy began operating with skeleton crews. Routine diplomatic communications became formal and minimal. The helpful suggestions and creative solutions that human diplomats had been known for simply stopped coming. At Kepler Station, the largest refugee processing center in known space, the changes became critical quickly. Dr. Martinez had coordinated aid distribution for 7 species of displaced persons. His system ensured that food, medicine, and shelter reached the right people at the right time. When he left for Earth, he trained 3 replacement coordinators, but none of them understood the full complexity of his work. Within a month, supply shipments began arriving at the wrong times. Medical supplies meant for aquatic species went to desert dwellers. Food suitable for herbivores got sent to carnivore camps. The refugee populations swelled past the station's capacity as conflicts across the galaxy created more displaced persons. Station Commander Yilks sent increasingly desperate requests to Earth for Dr. Martinez to return, even temporarily. The replies were polite but firm. "Dr. Martinez is no longer available for off-world assignments." The Galactic Council continued its regular sessions, but the atmosphere had changed. Without human mediators asking uncomfortable questions or proposing unexpected solutions, debates followed predictable patterns. The major powers argued. The minor powers chose sides. Nothing got resolved. The Vorlac-Thessian conflict expanded to 3 more star systems. Both sides built up their military forces while accusing the other of aggression. Trade routes became increasingly dangerous as naval patrols focused on potential enemy movements rather than protecting civilian shipping. Council Prime Veltar found the sessions more frustrating than ever. "We need creative solutions," he told his aide after another failed mediation attempt. "The same arguments lead to the same failures." His aide, a young Zephyrian named Hexval, reviewed the session records. The humans used to propose alternative approaches. Ambassador Park often found compromise positions that other species missed. Veltar's crystal body flickered with annoyance. Park's suggestions were too emotional, too focused on soft concerns rather than practical realities. His water rights proposal for the Kepler sector would never have worked. Respectfully, Council Prime, the current situation suggests that the practical realities have become worse without any mediation at all. Veltar dismissed his aide's concerns. The humans had always been too idealistic. Their absence might actually help the Council focus on serious solutions rather than sentimental compromises. In the outer regions, smaller species began to feel the changes more directly. Ambassador Tavara, of the Vegan Collective, reviewed reports from her colony worlds with growing alarm. The early warning systems that Dr. Chen had established were failing without proper maintenance. The agricultural techniques that human advisors had taught were being forgotten as local administrators made improvements that reduced efficiency. Tavara sent a message to the Altarian Science Collective, asking about Dr. Chen's departure. The reply was troubling. Dr. Chen completed her contracted obligations. Earth has declined our offers for renewed cooperation. We do not understand why. The Renterzam. O10. Similar responses came from a dozen other species. The humans had not been expelled or dismissed. They had simply finished their work and gone home. But none of them were accepting new assignments outside human space. Ambassador Tavara began connecting the scattered reports into a larger pattern. Human agricultural experts had left the outer colonies just as crop diseases were appearing. Human medical researchers had departed from plague-threatened worlds without training adequate replacements. Human peacekeepers had withdrawn from disputed territories where tensions were rising. Each departure, taken alone, seemed routine. Together, they represented something unprecedented. Humanity was quietly, systematically, withdrawing from galactic affairs. Tivara tried to discuss her concerns with other ambassadors, but the major powers remained focused on their own conflicts. The Vorlak and Thessians were too busy preparing for war to worry about missing human advisors. The Zephyrians considered human contributions too primitive to matter. The other major species saw opportunity in humanity's withdrawal, imagining they could fill any gaps with their own people. Only the minor species understood what was being lost. But minor species had little influence in galactic politics. Their concerns were noted and filed away, while the Council dealt with more important matters. As the fourth month since the failed Council session began, reports of instability increased across known space. Trade routes became dangerous. Refugee crises worsened. Regional conflicts spread. Scientific cooperation decreased. The careful balance of galactic civilization began to shift in ways that nobody quite understood. And on Earth, humanity continued its quiet withdrawal, watching from a distance as the galaxy learned to function without them. 6 months had passed since humanity began its quiet withdrawal. The galaxy was burning, and nobody seemed to understand why. The Vorlak-Thessian conflict had exploded into full warfare. What started as a dispute over mining rights now involved 8 star systems and millions of casualties. General Thrakus led massive battle fleets against Thessian mining platforms, while Trade Minister Kex organized economic blockades that strangled Vorlak supply lines. Council Prime Veltar floated in his crystal chamber, studying casualty reports with growing horror. The traditional mediation methods had failed completely. Every attempt at negotiation ended in accusations and threats. The Zephyrian hegemony was preparing to intervene militarily to restore order, which would only make everything worse. "We need someone who can speak to both sides," Veltar told his Security Council. "Someone neutral, who can find common ground." The humans were skilled at such work, suggested Hexval carefully. Perhaps we could request their assistance. Veltar's crystal form flickered with irritation. The humans abandoned their responsibilities when we needed stability. They chose isolation over cooperation. But even as he spoke, Veltar remembered something troubling. Ambassador Park's water rights proposal had predicted exactly this kind of escalation. The human had warned that both sides were fighting over resources they needed, but were too proud to admit needing. Across the galaxy, other crises multiplied beyond anyone's ability to manage them. Kepler Station housed over 12 million refugees from the expanding war zones. The facility had been designed for 3 million. Food riots broke out daily as supply distributions failed. Medical facilities were overwhelmed. Sanitation systems collapsed under the strain. Commander Yilks stood in the station's emergency command center, surrounded by displays showing red warning indicators. "How many relief ships are en route?" he asked his logistics coordinator. 17 from the Centauran Republic, 12 from the Altarian Collective, and 8 from the Vegan Alliance, replied the coordinator. But they're carrying incompatible supplies. The Centaurans sent aquatic habitat modules. The Altarians sent desert survival gear. The vegans sent plant-based food that most species cannot digest. Yilks rubbed his aching head. When Dr. Martinez had coordinated relief efforts, supplies arrived exactly where needed. When needed. The human had somehow understood the complex requirements of dozens of different species and matched them with available resources. "Contact Earth directly," Yilks ordered. "Offer whatever they want for Martinez to return, even temporarily." The response came back within hours. "Dr. Martinez is no longer available for off-world assignments. Earth wishes Commander Yilks success in resolving the current difficulties." In the Altarian home system, ecological disaster unfolded on 3 colony worlds. Dr. Chen's early warning systems had detected signs of atmospheric contamination, but without her expertise, the local scientists misinterpreted the data. Industrial pollutants reached critical levels before anyone realized the danger. Senior researcher Zalveth stood in his contaminated laboratory, wearing emergency breathing gear, as he watched his life's work crumble around him. The genetic adaptation techniques that Dr. Chen had taught him required constant adjustment based on environmental changes. Without her guidance, his attempts to help colonists adapt had failed catastrophically. "Can we synthesize her research?" he asked his assistant. "Reproduce her methodologies?" "We have all her published papers," the assistant replied sadly. But Dr. Chen's real skill was in seeing patterns that others missed. She understood biological systems intuitively. Her papers describe what she did, not how she thought. Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds where human expertise had quietly prevented disasters. Agricultural systems failed without proper management. Medical research programs stalled without innovative approaches. Diplomatic relationships fractured without skilled mediators. Ambassador Tavara of the Vegan Collective had spent 2 months compiling a comprehensive report on humanity's contributions to galactic stability. What she discovered shocked her. In the past decade alone, humans had prevented 47 regional conflicts through careful mediation. Their agricultural innovations had fed billions. Their medical research had saved entire species from extinction. Tavara presented her findings to a closed session of minor species representatives. The conference room on Nexus Prime had never hosted such a gathering. Ambassadors from 37 smaller civilizations listened in growing alarm as Tavara outlined the scope of humanity's quiet contributions. The Altarian plague that threatened to kill millions was stopped by Dr. Chen's early intervention, Tavara explained. The Centauran economic collapse was prevented by human financial advisors who restructured their debt without taking any profit. The territorial dispute between the Rigel colonies was resolved through cultural exchange programs that humans designed and funded. Representative after representative added their own examples. The humans had stopped a civil war on Proxima 4 by mediating between ethnic factions. They had prevented famine on the outer colony worlds by teaching drought-resistant farming techniques. They had saved the Kepler mining stations from catastrophic industrial accidents through improved safety protocols. In every case, Tavara continued, the humans asked for nothing in return. No territory, no tribute, no special trade agreements. They helped because they believed cooperation benefited everyone. Ambassador Kethril of the Tau Ceti Alliance raised a troubling question. If the humans were so valuable, why did we ignore their contributions? Why did we dismiss their proposals? The room fell silent. Everyone remembered times when human suggestions had been voted down or ignored. The proposals had seemed too idealistic, too concerned with soft issues like cultural sensitivities and emotional needs. The major powers wanted practical solutions, focused on immediate benefits. We treated them like helpful servants rather than equal partners, admitted Representative Yorth of the Proxima colonies. We took their help, but never gave them real influence in decisions. Tavara's report included a devastating analysis of current galactic stability. Without human mediation, conflicts were escalating faster than traditional diplomacy could handle them. Without human coordination, humanitarian aid was becoming less effective even as needs increased. Without human innovation, scientific progress was slowing across multiple fields. The humans were not just participants in galactic civilization, Tavara concluded. They were the glue holding it together. Meanwhile, Council Prime Veltar had privately reviewed 5 years of Council records. His analysis revealed a disturbing pattern. Human proposals, while often voted down, had correctly predicted every major crisis now facing the galaxy. Ambassador Park's dismissed water rights solution would have prevented the Vorlac-Thessian War. His rejected trade route security plan would have stopped the piracy epidemic. His ignored refugee management system would have prevented the humanitarian disasters now unfolding. Veltar's crystal form dimmed with something approaching shame. The humans had not been naive idealists. They had been the only species thinking beyond immediate self-interest to long-term stability. The Council voted to formally invite humanity back to active participation. They offered expanded voting rights, committee leadership positions, and formal recognition of Earth as a major galactic power. The invitation was prepared with great ceremony. Representatives from across the galaxy signed the document. Even the Vorlac and Thessians paused their war long enough to add their signatures. The response from Earth arrived within a week. It was brief, polite, and devastating. The government of Earth thanks the Galactic Council for its generous invitation to expanded participation. We have carefully considered this opportunity and must respectfully decline. Earth's current obligations require our full attention. We wish all member species success in their future endeavors. No explanation, no negotiation, no anger. Just a simple refusal that left the galaxy's leaders staring at their burning civilization with the growing realization that they had driven away the only species that might have been able to save it. And in the outer systems, smaller species began to wonder if galactic civilization itself could survive without the quiet wisdom that humanity had provided for over a century. 8 months after humanity's withdrawal began, the galaxy faced its darkest hour in centuries. The Vorlac-Thessian War had consumed 6 star systems and drawn 12 additional species into the conflict. Refugee populations swelled past 50 million displaced beings. Trade routes collapsed under piracy and military action. The Galactic Council met in emergency session daily, achieving nothing but increased hostility between members. On the mining world of Tau Ceti VII, disaster struck with devastating force. Industrial accidents had become common without human safety supervisors. Medical supplies ran short without human logistics coordinators. Food distribution systems failed without human administrators who understood multi-species dietary requirements. Then the plague came. Dr. Yorth examined the tissue samples in his makeshift laboratory, his 4-armed Proximan body trembling with exhaustion. The pathogen had appeared suddenly among the human-established refugee camps and was spreading faster than anyone could track. Without proper medical infrastructure, beings were dying from diseases that should have been easily preventable. "How many confirmed cases?" he asked his overworked assistant. "Over 3,000, in the last day alone," came the grim reply. "The pathogen affects 17 different species. We need specialized treatments for each biological system, but we don't have the expertise to develop them quickly enough." Dr. Yorth closed his eyes in despair. Dr. Martinez had designed medical protocols that would have contained this outbreak within hours. The human doctor had understood cross-species pathology better than anyone in the galaxy. His early warning systems would have detected the pathogen weeks before it reached critical mass. Now children were dying while Dr. Yorth struggled to reinvent solutions that humanity had already perfected. News of the Tau Ceti disaster reached Earth through news broadcasts. In her small apartment overlooking Seoul, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the reports with growing anguish. She recognized the symptoms immediately. Well, the pathogen was a mutated strain of something she had studied extensively. She could have identified the proper treatment protocols in minutes. Chen reached for her communication device 3 times before stopping herself. Earth's position was clear. No off-world assignments. No exceptions. Humanity had tried to help the galaxy for over a century, only to be dismissed as naive idealists when their wisdom was most needed. But watching children die when she knew how to save them felt like betrayal of everything she believed in. Ambassador Tavara led a desperate delegation to Earth's Luna City embassy. Representatives from 23 minor species accompanied her, many of them carrying personal appeals from their homeworlds. The embassy building felt eerily empty, staffed by only basic clerical personnel who seemed surprised by the large group. "Please," Tavara begged the duty officer. "Our people are dying. The humans have the knowledge to help us." Dr. Chen's research could save millions of lives on Tau Ceti VII alone. The duty officer, a middle-aged human woman named Patricia Wells, looked genuinely sympathetic. "I understand your desperation, Ambassador Tavara. But Earth's policy is clear. Our resources and personnel are committed to domestic priorities." "What domestic priorities?" demanded Ambassador Kethril of the Tau Ceti Alliance. "Earth faces no crises. Your people live in peace, while the galaxy burns." Wells maintained her professional composure, despite the accusation. "Earth's responsibilities now lie closer to home. We wish you success in resolving your current difficulties through your own efforts." The carefully neutral language could not hide the underlying message. The galaxy had made its choice when it dismissed human contributions as worthless sentiment. Now it could live with the consequences. Tavara tried a different approach. "What would it take to change Earth's position? What do you truly want from us?" Wells paused for a long moment. "I'm not authorized to discuss policy alternatives. If you want to understand Earth's perspective, I suggest speaking with former Ambassador Park. He teaches at the University of Seoul and might be willing to meet privately." The delegation left the embassy with hope dimming. Earth's refusal was not angry or vindictive. It was simply indifferent. The galaxy's suffering no longer registered as humanity's concern. While Tavara's delegation struggled with Earth's bureaucracy, the galactic situation continued deteriorating. The Zephyrian hegemony had finally entered the Vorlac-Thessian conflict with overwhelming technological force, but their intervention only created new problems. Zephyrian peacekeeping methods involved suppressing all resistance through superior firepower, turning both sides against them. Council Prime Veltar found himself mediating between 3 warring factions instead of 2, with each side demanding that the others be punished for various atrocities. The council chamber had become a place where species shouted accusations rather than seeking solutions. "We need someone who understands emotional dynamics," Veltar admitted to his aide privately. "Someone who can address the underlying fears driving this conflict." Hex Val pulled up old session records. Ambassador Park's psychological profiles were remarkably accurate. He predicted that military intervention would increase resistance rather than reducing it. Veltar's crystal body flickered with frustrated light. The humans had warned about exactly this scenario, but their warnings had been dismissed as naive, thinking that ignored hard military realities. In the outer colonies, individual stories of loss multiplied into systemic collapse. Commander Josu Martinez had spent 5 years building trust between the warrior Vorlak and the peaceful Centaurons. His joint training programs had created the galaxy's most effective peacekeeping forces, where traditional enemies learned to work together toward common goals. Without his influence, old prejudices resurged like poison in the bloodstream. Vorlak warriors began viewing Centauran pacifism as weakness. Centaurons saw Vorlak aggression as barbaric. The shared understanding that Martinez had carefully built crumbled in months. Former student Captain Velnash sent desperate messages to Earth, begging for Martinez to return even temporarily. The responses were always the same: polite regrets and wishes for success through independent efforts. Tavara finally managed to arrange a private meeting with former Ambassador Minjun Park at the University of Seoul. She traveled to Earth with a small delegation, hoping to understand what had driven humanity to abandon the galaxy in its darkest hour. Park received them in his modest office overlooking the campus. He served traditional Korean tea while listening to their desperate appeals for help. His manner remained calm and thoughtful, showing no anger or resentment toward the species that had dismissed him. Dr. Chen could save thousands of lives on Tau Ceti VII, Tavara pleaded. Commander Martinez could resolve the peacekeeping crisis in the outer systems. You could mediate the expanding conflicts that threaten to tear galactic civilization apart. Why won't you help us? Park sipped his tea slowly before answering. Tell me, Ambassador Tavara, why should we help? The question struck Tavara like a physical blow. Because beings are dying. Because civilization is collapsing. Because it's the right thing to do. Those are reasons why someone might want to help, Park agreed gently. But they are not reasons why someone should be obligated to help. For over a century, humanity offered its best efforts to build a better galaxy. We were dismissed as naive, idealistic, and irrelevant. Our solutions were voted down. Our warnings were ignored. Our expertise was taken for granted. Park set down his teacup and looked directly at Tavara. We realized that we were trying to save a galaxy that did not want to be saved. At least, not by us. But surely you care about the suffering, protested Representative Yorth. Of course we care, Park replied quietly. That caring nearly destroyed us. Do you know what it feels like to watch preventable disasters unfold because your warnings were ignored? To see beings die because your solutions were dismissed as sentiment? We cared so much that we sacrificed our own interests for centuries, only to be treated as useful servants rather than equal partners. Park stood and walked to his window, looking out at the peaceful Earth cityscape. Humanity learned a hard lesson about the difference between helping and enabling. True cooperation requires mutual respect and shared responsibility. The galaxy wanted our solutions but not our input in creating them. Tavara felt a chill of understanding. You left, hoping we would learn to value partnership over domination. We left hoping you would grow into the civilization you claim to want, Park confirmed. A galaxy based on cooperation rather than conquest, wisdom rather than force, understanding rather than prejudice. But growth requires struggle. Sometimes, beings must face consequences before they can change. The delegation left Earth with a terrible new understanding. Humanity had not abandoned the galaxy out of anger or spite. They had stepped back to let the galaxy learn lessons that could only be learned through painful experience. The question now was whether galactic civilization could survive long enough to learn them. Ambassador Tavara stood before the emergency assembly of minor species on Nexus Prime, her report heavy in her hands. The great chamber that usually hosted the full Galactic Council now held only 37 representatives. The major powers remained locked in their conflicts. too proud to admit they needed help from anyone. "I have spoken with the humans," Tavara announced to the gathered delegates. "I understand now why they withdrew, and I believe I know what we must do." The chamber fell silent. These species had lost the most from humanity's absence. Their worlds burned while the major powers fought over territory and pride. Their people died while advanced civilizations squabbled over ancient grievances. "The humans did not abandon us out of cruelty," Tavara continued. "They stepped back because we never truly accepted them as equals. For over a century, we took their help while ignoring their wisdom. We wanted their solutions, but not their partnership." Representative Yorth of the Proxima colonies leaned forward. "What do they want from us? Tribute? Territory? Special trading rights?" Tavara shook her head. "They want nothing that we can give them through negotiation. They want something that can only be earned. Genuine respect for cooperative principles. They want us to prove that we can build a civilization based on partnership rather than domination." Ambassador Kethril of the Tau Ceti Alliance stood up angrily. "My people are dying, while the humans play games with philosophical principles. This is exactly the kind of idealistic nonsense that makes them useless as allies." The outburst hung in the air like poison gas. Tavara looked at Kethril with sad understanding. "Do you hear yourself, Ambassador? You just called their principles useless while begging for their help. This is why they left. We want their benefits while rejecting their values." The truth hit the assembly like a cold wave. They had gathered here to demand that humanity save them, but they still thought like the old galaxy. They still wanted someone else to solve their problems without changing how they approached those problems. Tavara activated a holographic display showing casualty reports from across known space. "The humans tried to teach us that lasting solutions require addressing underlying causes, not just immediate symptoms. They understood that beings fight over resources when they could cooperate to create abundance. They knew that fear drives aggression when it could drive innovation." On the display, the numbers told a stark story. 53 million refugees. 800,000 confirmed dead in the expanding wars. 12 star systems under military occupation. Trade collapsed by 70%. Scientific cooperation at its lowest point in recorded history. "We have a choice," Tavara continued. "We can continue demanding that others solve our problems, or we can start building the kind of civilization that deserves their partnership." The assembly erupted in debate. Some representatives argued that they needed immediate help, regardless of philosophical considerations. Others insisted that the major powers would never accept guidance from minor species. A few suggested that humanity was being unreasonably stubborn in the face of galactic suffering. During the chaos, a quiet voice spoke from the back of the chamber. "Perhaps we should ask what we can do for each other, rather than what Earth should do for us." The speaker was Ambassador Velnash of the Centauran Republic. His people had been humanity's closest partners, and they understood the human approach better than most. "Commander Martinez taught my people that strength comes from empowering others, not dominating them," Velnash explained. "When we worked together, both species became more capable. When we competed for dominance, both sides became weaker." He activated his own display, showing successful cooperative projects from the past decade. The refugee relief programs worked when species coordinated their strengths instead of duplicating efforts. The anti-piracy patrols succeeded when different fleets specialized in complementary roles. The agricultural improvements spread fastest when species shared knowledge freely rather than hoarding advantages. Tavara felt a spark of hope. "What are you proposing, Velnash?" "I propose that we stop waiting for permission to build a better galaxy," Velnash replied. "The humans cannot save us, but they showed us how to save ourselves. We have the knowledge. We have the resources. What we lack is the will to cooperate without someone forcing us to do it." The assembly considered this radical suggestion. Work together without the major powers? Coordinate relief efforts without council approval? Share resources and knowledge freely? It sounded impossible. But then again, so had most of humanity's successful projects. Ambassador Zalveth of the Altarian Science Collective stood slowly. His people had worked closely with Dr. Chen, and they had learned more than just science from the collaboration. The Altarian Collective offers to share all medical research with any species facing health crises, he announced. No patents, no trade restrictions, no political conditions. Dr. Chen taught us that knowledge belongs to all who need it. A murmur of surprise rippled through the chamber. Scientific knowledge was usually the most closely guarded resource in galactic politics. The Vegan Alliance will coordinate refugee relief in the outer systems, Tavara added. We have transport capacity and experience managing displaced populations. We ask only for cooperation, not compensation. Representative after representative stood to offer their species unique capabilities. Agricultural knowledge, mining expertise, medical supplies, transport vessels, communication networks. Resources that had been hoarded or traded for advantage were offered freely for the common good. The transformation was not immediate or complete. Old habits and prejudices ran deep. Some species tried to take advantage of the new cooperation while offering little in return. Some representatives faced resistance from their own governments when they returned home with radical proposals. But in the outer systems, where crisis demanded innovation, the new approach began to work. Multi-species relief teams, coordinated by the Vegan Alliance, brought order to refugee camps. Medical knowledge shared freely by the Altarians contained the plague on Tau Ceti VII. Agricultural techniques distributed without restriction prevented famine on a dozen colony worlds. News of these successes reached Earth through various channels. Dr. Chen learned that Altarian scientists were successfully treating the pathogen outbreak using principles from her research. Commander Martinez heard that his former students were implementing joint peacekeeping operations. Ambassador Park received reports that minor species were mediating conflicts using techniques he had developed. The humans watched these developments with quiet interest. They had not expected immediate transformation, but the direction of change was encouraging. 6 months after Tavara's assembly, she returned to Earth with a different kind of delegation. This time, she came not to beg for help, but to propose genuine partnership. The representatives with her carried reports of successful cooperation projects and detailed plans for expanded coordination. Former Ambassador Park received them in the same modest office, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Tavara no longer carried the desperate energy of someone seeking salvation from others. She radiated the quiet confidence of someone who had learned to create solutions. We have come to invite Earth to join a new kind of galactic cooperation, Tavara announced. Not as leaders or followers, but as equal partners in building something better. Park reviewed their reports with growing admiration. The refugee relief networks were more efficient than anything the old council had achieved. The scientific cooperation programs were accelerating research across multiple fields. The conflict mediation systems were resolving disputes before they became wars. You have learned well, Park said simply. But why do you need us? You seem to be succeeding independently. Tavara smiled. We learned from you that cooperation makes everyone stronger. We do not need Earth to save us. We need Earth to help us become something greater than the sum of our parts. Park considered the proposal carefully. Earth had been watching the galaxy's transformation with hope and concern. The new cooperation was impressive, but it remained fragile. The major powers still clung to old patterns of domination and conflict. The changes were spreading slowly, sometimes stopped by entrenched interests. What about the Vorlak Empire? The Thessian Collective? The Zephyrian Hegemony? Park asked. They have not embraced your new approaches. The Zephyrian Collective? The Zephyrian Collective? The Zephyrian Collective? They will learn, or they will become irrelevant, Tavara replied with calm certainty. Civilizations that cannot adapt to changing realities eventually fade away. We are building the future. They are clinging to the past. Park nodded slowly. The galaxy was learning the hardest lesson of all. That true strength came not from controlling others, but from empowering them to achieve their best potential. It was a lesson that humanity had tried to teach for over a century. 3 weeks later, Earth announced its decision to join the new cooperative alliance as a founding partner. Not to lead it, but to contribute to it. Dr. Chen returned to her research with Altarian colleagues. Commander Martinez resumed his work building trust between former enemies. Ambassador Park accepted appointment as Earth's representative to the new organization. The old Galactic Council continued to exist, but its influence diminished as species chose cooperation over competition. The major powers eventually joined the alliance as well, though it took several more years for them to fully embrace its principles. The galaxy had learned, though the lesson had cost millions of lives and countless suffering. Sometimes the greatest gift was not rescuing someone from their mistakes, but allowing them to learn from the consequences. Humanity had stepped away when the galaxy needed to grow. Now they stepped forward, as the galaxy proved it was ready to grow with them. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time in centuries, it was being built on genuine partnership rather than domination. And in that partnership, the quiet wisdom that humanity had always offered could finally flourish among beings ready to listen.